The waitress had just placed the bill on the table when Claire Morgan quietly pushed her chair back and reached for her coat. Her face had turned pale, and the confidence she had carried into the little Italian restaurant seemed to disappear in an instant. She looked at the total, then at the man sitting across from her, and whispered that she could not afford the date. What happened next was so simple that she would remember it for the rest of her life. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change a person's life, please take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the smallest act of compassion becomes the beginning of someone's greatest second chance. Claire had spent the entire afternoon convincing herself that she should cancel. She was 34, worked as a receptionist at a small dental office in Columbus, Ohio, and had become very good at pretending everything was fine. Her apartment was modest, her car was old, and every month seemed to end a few days before her paycheck arrived. She had agreed to dinner with Matthew Hayes because her coworker insisted that he was different from the men Claire had dated before. Matthew was a single father who worked as a high school history teacher, and according to everyone who knew him, he was patient, thoughtful, and genuinely kind. Claire wasn't looking for romance as much as she was looking for proof that good people still existed. Matthew arrived wearing a simple blue shirt and carrying the tired but warm smile of a man who had learned to find happiness in ordinary things. He told Claire about his 8-year-old son, Noah, who loved astronomy and had recently decided he would become an astronaut. He spoke about his late wife with quiet respect, never turning her memory into something uncomfortable or tragic. Claire slowly relaxed. For the first time in months, she laughed without thinking about bills, responsibilities, or what might go wrong. The evening passed almost too quickly. They shared pasta, talked about childhood dreams, laughed over embarrassing school stories, and discovered that both of them loved old Christmas movies. Claire almost forgot that she had only $28 in her checking account until the waitress placed the bill on the table. She glanced at it and immediately knew she had made a mistake. The restaurant had been more expensive than she expected, and panic tightened in her chest. She quietly explained that she couldn't afford the dinner and reached into her purse, embarrassed beyond words. She expected Matthew to look disappointed. Instead, he gently pushed the bill toward himself. He told her she had nothing to apologize for and that the purpose of the evening had never been to see how much money she could spend. Then he said something that stopped her completely. He had learned a long time ago that a person's worth could never be measured by what they could afford. Claire stared at him, fighting tears. She admitted that she almost canceled the date because she was tired of pretending she had a life she couldn't afford. Matthew didn't judge her. He told her that he understood more than she realized because after his wife died, there had been months when he counted every dollar, packed the same lunch for days, and quietly worried about whether he could give Noah the childhood he deserved. That honesty changed the atmosphere between them. There was no grand romantic gesture, no expensive restaurant, and no perfect movie ending. There were simply two tired people sitting across from each other, discovering that neither had to pretend. But Matthew hadn't told Claire everything. The following week, Claire learned that his school had unexpectedly cut several teaching positions, and Matthew was facing the possibility of losing his job. Instead of disappearing, Claire surprised him by offering to help organize his resume and search for positions. She wasn't wealthy, but she knew how to navigate applications and office paperwork. Soon, their conversations became less about dating and more about supporting one another. Matthew eventually found another teaching position at a nearby school. Claire also accepted a better administrative job after Matthew encouraged her to stop believing that her circumstances defined her future. Months later, they returned to the same restaurant, this time with Noah. The little boy recognized the waitress and proudly announced that his father had finally found someone who liked astronomy almost as much as he did. Claire laughed, and Matthew watched her with a quiet gratitude that words couldn't capture. When the bill arrived, Claire reached for it first. Matthew smiled and tried to protest, but she shook her head and reminded him of the night he had told her that kindness mattered more than money. She paid for dinner, not because she had suddenly become wealthy, but because she wanted him to know that his kindness had come back around. Their relationship didn't become perfect overnight. They still had difficult days, disagreements, unexpected expenses, and moments when fear returned. But they had built something stronger than perfection. They had built trust. Years later, Claire would still remember that first dinner. Not because of the restaurant or the meal, but because she had walked in believing she had nothing to offer and walked out realizing that being honest, caring, and willing to love were worth far more than money. And Matthew never forgot the moment she said she couldn't afford the date. To him, that wasn't the night Claire embarrassed herself. It was the night she trusted him enough to tell the truth. If this story touched your heart, please support the video with a like, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more stories about kindness, hope, and the unexpected ways people can change each other's lives. And before you go, leave a comment telling us this: would you have reacted the way Matthew did if someone you cared about admitted they couldn't afford the life they were trying to show you? Sometimes love doesn't begin with flowers, expensive dinners, or perfect circumstances. Sometimes it begins with one person looking at another person's embarrassment and saying, without judgment, "You don't have to prove your worth to me." That night, Claire thought she couldn't afford the date. What she didn't know was that she had just found something money could never buy.